What would you do if in a single moment a stranger's words tore apart everything you believed about your family, leaving you gasping for truth in a world built on lies? Michael Turner had spent his entire life wrapped in wealth and power, certain that his mother had died the day he was born. Yet one trembling hand, holding a scratched silver locket, shattered that illusion forever. Inside the tiny frame was the face he thought he had lost, the face of the woman who gave him life. His heart raced, anger and disbelief colliding in his chest, and for the first time in years, he felt like a child again, lost, abandoned, desperate for answers. The weight of betrayal pressed down on him as though the ground itself might give way. Stay with this story, because what Michael discovers next will not only shake his empire, but also force him to make a choice that could destroy or save everything he holds dear. On a bitter November morning in Boston, the city moved at its usual breakneck pace. Commuters hustled toward trains, horns echoed down narrow streets, and the smell of roasted coffee floated through the air. No one stopped to notice the small figure curled on a piece of cardboard outside a shuttered bakery. Emily Carter, just 6 years old, pulled her torn blue sweater tight around her body. Her sneakers were ripped open at the toes, her hair was a tangled mess, and her hands trembled from the cold. Around her neck hung the one thing she guarded like a secret treasure, a scratched silver locket inside of which rested a faded photograph of a woman with kind eyes and a soft smile. Her mother, Grace Carter. Emily barely remembered her voice, but the photo was proof that she had once been held, once been loved. That morning she wandered into downtown Boston. She watched children with clean coats rush to school, their mothers balancing lattes in one hand and strollers in the other. Businessmen stormed out of towers, polished shoes hitting the pavement with a rhythm of authority. People dropped coins into her hand without ever meeting her eyes. She was invisible except for the occasional glance of pity or discomfort. Emily stopped in front of a luxury boutique. In the glass reflection, she caught a glimpse of herself, large, tired eyes above a grimy face, hair falling over her cheek, and the faint outline of the locket glinting from under her collar. She whispered to it as though her mother could still hear. "I'll find him, Mama, I promise." Then she turned and the world shifted. A tall man in a navy suit strode out of a skyscraper just across the street. His polished shoes tapped against the stone sidewalk. His leather briefcase swung at his side, and a phone was pressed against his ear. People made space for him without hesitation, even the security guards rushing to hold the glass doors. Michael Turner. The name carried power in Boston, the millionaire developer who shaped neighborhoods with a signature. To the city, he was brilliant, ruthless, untouchable. To Emily, he was something else, an answer. She followed him, at first timidly, then with greater urgency, weaving between pedestrians as he neared a sleek black car waiting by the curb. Michael pressed the unlock button and placed his hand on the door handle. Something stirred in him, a strange prickle, as if the city itself had gone quiet. He turned. Standing behind him was the thin girl in the torn sweater. Her eyes trembled with fear and hope, far too old for her age. Slowly, Emily stretched out her hand. In her dirty palm rested the locket. "Sir," she whispered, her voice steady despite the quiver in her lips. "This is yours." Michael frowned. "What?" she repeated more firmly. "It's yours." His first instinct was to brush her off, assume it was some trick. But then his eyes caught hers, eyes that seemed to pierce through his perfectly ordered life. Against his own logic, he took the locket from her. It was old, scratched. But when he flicked it open, his entire world stopped. Inside was the same photograph he had kept hidden away in a drawer since childhood. His mother, Grace Carter, smiling timidly. The mother his father had told him had died the day he was born. The lie he had accepted without question. Michael staggered, his breath catching in his throat. He turned to Emily, questions clawing at him, but she had already taken a step back. "She told me to find you," Emily whispered, tears brimming. Before he could speak, she turned and bolted, vanishing into the rush of Boston streets. He stood frozen, the locket shaking in his hand, the noise of the city fading into silence. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw 3 boys trailing after Emily, their voices mocking, their hands reaching for her sweater. "Give it here, street rat," one shouted. Michael's body moved before his mind caught up. He stormed forward, his commanding presence scattering the boys, his voice sharper than he had ever used in a boardroom. Emily stumbled back, wide-eyed, stunned that he had stepped in to protect her. "Why did you give me this?" he demanded, holding up the locket. Emily's voice shook. "Mama said I could only trust you if you were willing to give up everything to find me." Her words landed like a strike to his chest. Then she turned and disappeared again, leaving him with nothing but the locket and the haunting echo of her voice. That night, Michael didn't return to his office or answer his investors' calls. He sat alone in his penthouse overlooking the Charles River, the locket lying open on his desk. Next to it, he placed the only photograph of his mother he'd ever known. The images were identical. His father had lied. The life he had built on power and control suddenly felt hollow. Michael's hand trembled as he traced the faint engraving on the back of the locket. It was almost worn away, but he rubbed until the letters revealed themselves. E.C. Emily Carter. His pulse spiked. Could she truly be his sister? He grabbed his coat, racing back into the city, demanding answers from anyone who might have seen her. A janitor, a vendor, a guard. No one knew. Hours blurred into exhaustion. At last, he sank onto a bench, staring at the locket, rage and sorrow burning through him. For the first time in years, the man who had built towers out of stone and glass felt powerless against the fragility of a child's outstretched hand. As the night deepened, a gnawing question echoed louder than the chaos around him. If everything his father told him was a lie, then finding Emily meant more than uncovering the truth. It meant choosing who he wanted to become. But what if that choice cost him everything? And so he sat beneath Boston's skyline, torn apart by a single question: am I strong enough to give up the life I built to protect the sister I never knew existed? The night bled into dawn, but Michael Turner could not escape the image of that little girl's face. Emily's words, "Mama said I could only trust you if you were willing to give up everything to find me," looped through his mind like a curse. He had spent years mastering control, reducing emotions to numbers, profits, and signatures on contracts. Yet in a single day, a child had cracked open the foundation of his life and left him with more questions than he could bear. By the time the first light broke over Boston, Michael already knew where he had to go. There was only one person who might hold the truth about his mother, Margaret Hayes, the woman who had once been more of a parent to him than his own father. His black Mercedes felt almost obscene as it rolled into the aging streets of Cambridge District, where peeling paint and broken fences told stories money had ignored for decades. He stopped in front of a small, weathered house with a statue of the Virgin Mary in the yard. His hand hesitated before knocking, as if he were bracing himself for the collapse of everything he thought he knew. When the door opened, Margaret's eyes widened. She was older, her hair streaked with silver, but her gaze was the same steady warmth he remembered as a boy. For a long moment, she just looked at him as though deciding whether he deserved to step inside. Then with a trembling hand, she motioned him forward. "It's been years, Michael," she said softly. Inside the house smelled faintly of old wood and candle wax. Rosaries hung on the wall, and family photos lined the mantel. He sat across from her, the locket burning in his palm. Without a word, he placed it on the table. Margaret's breath caught. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears forming instantly. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "A little girl gave it to me yesterday," Michael said. "She said it was mine." Her body shuddered as if she had been struck. "So she found you." Michael leaned forward, voice low and urgent. "Who is she, Margaret? Tell me everything." Her hands trembled as she reached for the locket. "Your father lied to you," she said, her voice cracking. "Your mother didn't die giving birth to you. Grace lived. But when she became pregnant again and the child wasn't his, he threw her out. He erased her from your life, from everyone's life. And that child, Michael, was Emily. She's your sister." The words slammed into him like a blow. He gripped the edge of the table, the room spinning. His father's face, his empire, the name Turner that commanded respect, it all felt poisoned, rotting at the root. "My sister," he repeated hoarsely. Margaret nodded, tears streaking down her face. "Grace raised her alone until she died 2 years ago at St. Mary's Shelter. Emily has been on her own since then. She doesn't trust anyone. She barely speaks. But she carries that locket because Grace told her it would lead her to you one day." Michael's chest tightened until he could hardly breathe. He thought of Emily's eyes, so hollow and yet so full of fire. "I have to find her," he whispered. For the next 3 days, Michael abandoned everything: meetings, deals, his father's incessant calls. He walked alleys plastered with graffiti, bribed security guards, questioned vendors and social workers. A small girl, dark hair, blue sweater, about 6 years old. "Have you seen her?" he repeated until his throat burned. Most shook their heads. Some muttered that there were too many children like that. His phone buzzed constantly with calls from board members, warning him that the company was on edge, that his sudden absence was fueling rumors. He ignored them, yet the weight of their threats clung to him. One night, a furious investor confronted him outside his office tower, hissing that if he didn't return to the boardroom, they'd force him out. Michael stared him down, every inch of him torn between the empire he had built and the fragile hope of saving his sister. At last, he turned away, his voice cold. "Then take it. I won't stop looking." By the third night, exhaustion clawed at him. He sat in his car outside a shelter, his tie loose, eyes bloodshot. A social worker had mentioned a girl matching Emily's description had been seen near the old bus depot. With a surge of desperate energy, Michael crossed the street, his heart hammering. The depot was a skeleton of its past, filled with shadows and the echo of dripping water. He scanned the rows of benches. At first, nothing, only silence. Then in the far corner, he saw her. Curled against the wall, her small frame shaking with each breath. "Emily," he whispered. Her eyes snapped open, terror flashing across her face. She scrambled to her feet, ready to run. "Wait!" Michael raised his hands. "Please, don't be afraid. I'm not here to hurt you." She froze, chest heaving, her gaze flicking toward the exit. Michael stepped forward cautiously. "That locket, it belonged to my mother too. Your mother, Grace Carter." "She was my mom." Emily's brow furrowed, her fists clenched. She said you would find me." Her voice cracked with disbelief. "But everyone lies." Michael's throat tightened. With trembling hands, he pulled a photograph from his pocket, the one Margaret had given him of their mother holding Emily as a baby. He held it out. "Look," he whispered. "This is real. She wanted us together. She wanted me to take care of you." Emily stepped closer, her eyes locked on the photo. Her lips trembled, tears spilling down her cheeks. For the first time, she whispered something so faint it nearly broke him. "I'm tired." Michael's knees gave way as he knelt before her. "Then let me carry the weight for you now." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then slowly, carefully, Emily placed the photo back in his hands and leaned against his shoulder. His arms closed around her fragile frame, and in that abandoned bus depot, Michael felt the walls he had built his entire life begin to collapse. But even as he held her, another thought crept in, like a shadow gnawing at his resolve. Could he really protect her when his father and the world he had built would do everything to tear them apart? Michael Turner carried Emily out of the bus depot, as if the world around him had gone silent. For years, he had lived among steel towers and glass walls, commanding people with his signature and silence. But that night, with Emily's fragile weight pressed against his shoulder, he felt something new stir in him, a responsibility deeper than contracts, deeper than wealth. The city lights blurred outside the car window, neon bleeding into shadow, and Michael realized the journey was only beginning. The days that followed were filled with tension as he tried to fold Emily into his life. At first, she barely spoke. She ate in silence, always keeping her backpack within reach, as if ready to disappear again. At night, she curled on the far side of the bed, her body stiff with mistrust. Michael didn't push. He remembered Margaret's warning, "Don't bury her in promises. Prove it." So he cooked simple meals, waited for her outside school when she agreed to go, and left paper and crayons on the table for her. Slowly, fragile cracks of trust began to show. One morning, he found a drawing taped to the refrigerator. 3 stick figures, one labeled Emily, one labeled Michael, and one drawn with a kind smile. "That's Mama," she whispered when he asked. But the world outside their small bubble did not stay quiet. Michael's father called, his voice venomous. "You're throwing everything away," the old man snapped. "The company is bleeding while you babysit a stray." Michael's jaw tightened as he looked across the table at Emily, who was tracing letters in her notebook. "She's not a stray," he said coldly. "She's my sister." His father's laughter cut sharp. "A mistake, just like your mother. I erased them for a reason. If you walk away now, you lose everything." Michael hung up his pulse thundering. For the first time in his life, he didn't care about losing it all. Yet the storm grew louder. A journalist leaked documents tying Turner Enterprises to decades of evictions, including the one that had left Grace Carter homeless. Headlines screamed across Boston Millionaire air, linked to mother's tragic death. At school, Emily overheard whispers. "That's the girl from the article, the one whose mom died because of him." She came home with tears streaking her cheeks, clutching the locket against her chest. "They're saying it's your fault Mama died." Michael knelt in front of her, his voice breaking. "I made mistakes. I signed things without knowing. But I never wanted to hurt her or you. I swear I'm not going anywhere." Emily shook her head. "Everybody leaves. Mom left. Dad left. Even you will if this gets worse." He pulled a folded letter from his pocket, worn at the edges, the last letter Grace had written. "Read this again," he urged gently. Emily's small fingers traced the words. "If you ever meet your sister, don't let her go. She's your family." Emily's tears blurred her sight, but her whisper carried steady. "She wanted us together." Michael pressed his forehead against hers. "And that's where I'll stay." The battle that followed was fought in court. Child Services demanded proof Michael could provide a stable home. His father arrived in the courtroom determined to strip him of guardianship. The judge's gaze was sharp. "Mr. Turner, why should we believe you can raise this child when your own family history is fractured?" Michael rose, his voice steady, though his hands shook. "Because fractured doesn't mean broken forever. My father erased my mother and my sister, but I will not continue that cycle. Emily deserves safety, love, and a chance to heal, and I will give her that, even if it costs me everything else." Emily was asked to speak. Her small body trembled as she stood, her locket clasped tightly in her hand. The courtroom went silent. "I want to stay with my brother," she said softly. "He's the first person who hasn't left me." The gavel struck once. Custody granted. Relief flooded Michael as Emily ran into his arms, whispering a single word that shattered the last wall around his heart. "Brother." Months later, Michael's penthouse was unrecognizable. Laughter echoed down its once silent halls. Drawings lined the refrigerator, and Sunday mornings smelled of pancakes. Emily hummed while she painted by the window, sunlight warming her face. Michael no longer measured his worth in profits or stock values. His fortune now swung her legs at the dining table, syrup dripping from her chin, eyes shining with a safety she had never known. One evening, Emily placed the locket on the table. "I don't need this anymore," she said softly. "Mama lives here now." She touched her chest, then pointed at Michael. His throat tightened, eyes burning in the best way. He took her hand, closing it gently around the locket. "Then we'll keep it safe together." For the first time in his life, Michael Turner knew what it meant to be rich, not in wealth, but in love, family, and second chances that heal even the deepest wounds. Now tell me, if you were in Michael's place, would you have chosen to risk everything you built for the chance to protect your sister? And if you were, Emily, would you dare to trust again after a lifetime of abandonment? What do you think of this story? Thank you for staying with me through it. If you loved it, comment no 3 below. If you felt neutral, comment no 2. And if you weren't satisfied, comment no 1. Tell us where in the world you are watching from. And don't forget to tap the heart and share this video so others can feel the same. See you in the next emotional story.